The Biden-Harris administration actually has the uh, boldest climate agenda in our nation's history. And we have net zero by 2050, very ambitious interim goals as well. But it's not just um, what these goals are, but how do we achieve them? And so I do want to emphasize the energy and environmental justice and benefiting those who've experienced injustice in the past, so especially disadvantaged communities. So this is energy consumption. Now let's look at CO2. And so here, 5 billion tons here. You can see the breakout in the US market here. So industry, buildings, transportation, we rely very heavily on cars. It's a large country, power, and hydrogen is one part of a really comprehensive portfolio. So we need all the tools in the toolbox. We are focusing on obviously renewables, but also nuclear, fossil with CCS, really an all of the above strategy. And hydrogen here, shown as the Swiss Army knife, um, is one key component. So now going back to the legislation, unprecedented again in our history. So you can see the bipartisan infrastructure law, Inflation Reduction Act, and I do want to emphasize that, and there are many, tax credits and so forth still in process. But I do want to emphasize that we are trying to stay away from the colors. I know we've talked a lot about colors, but it's really about the carbon intensity. So you can see we have various thresholds here. The best would be 0.45 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of hydrogen on a well to gate basis. So not just the production piece, but that's when you can get the $3 per kilogram tax credit. So this is just one example. And then we have many others, and then required establishing a national clean hydrogen strategy, which I'll talk about next. And I should ask, how many of you have actually read the US National Clean Hydrogen Strategy? Raise your hands. Okay, not too many. So I'll give you the, 3-minute version. But basically, there are 3 pillars to the strategy. First of all, target strategic high impact uses of hydrogen. So those hard to decarbonize sectors. Second is we have to reduce the cost. And third, focus on regional networks. So the concept of the hubs, clusters, and then many enabling activities, workforce, jobs, safety, environmental justice components. And so the bottom line, though, is we have the goals of 10 million metric tons of clean hydrogen. So we use the term clean hydrogen by 2030, double that by 2040, and 5 times that by 2050. And if we can get there, that could contribute about 10% total emissions reduction. So remember, if we're trying to get to net zero, 10% from hydrogen across all the sectors is really significant. So, but again, we have to get there. So now, when we developed the national strategy, it's not about just hydrogen production, but also the market and the demand. So I'm going to walk through this. Basically, this y-axis is the price of hydrogen, or the willingness to pay hydrogen produced, delivered, dispensed. And if we can get to a price, again, of about $5 or $4 per kilogram, that will start to get market penetration, in this case for the US market, of trucks, so fuel cell trucks. And you can see if we get 10 to 15% of all the trucks, um, we would have 5 to 8 million metric tons of hydrogen that would be used. But if we want to start getting into some of these other markets, we have to bring the price down of clean hydrogen. So biofuels, power to liquid, steel, ammonia. Again, there are different scenarios here of, but basically, lots of opportunity. And so if you take this picture and you flip it vertically, that is what gives you our national strategy. So you can see today, basically, and there's a lot of uncertainty here. So we could have some exports, and you can see first we start, just like we heard in the Indian strategy, with existing industries, ammonia, refineries, and we start to scale up. You can see these other colors and other markets that start to come in, and then we can get to our national goals. But the key is that there's a lot of uncertainty. So we have various scenarios, and you can see across these sectors here, the light green is optimistic and more conservative scenarios. The dark green are the core scenarios that we're looking at in terms of, again, the market demand and how we can get to those numbers for hydrogen. But the key is really cost. So the second part of our pillar is cost reduction. And again, many thousands of stakeholders. There are many challenges to hydrogen. I think we have to keep emphasizing that. Infrastructure, safety concerns. We heard about R&D funding, but cost is still considered the number one challenge. If we don't get the cost down, that we're not going to get that market penetration that we need. And so hopefully you all have heard of the hydrogen shots. When President Biden asked our Secretary of Energy when he first came, what can we do to really accelerate progress towards the climate crisis? Well, similar to the moonshot from over half a century ago. So this is one in a series of energy earth shots. And so 111 is the goal. And in the US, remember that hydrogen is only $1.50, mostly from natural gas. So for us to be competitive, we have to get down to that low cost. And that's partly why we have the tax credit subsidies. And so we're focusing on that as part of the national strategy. And then the third piece of the strategy is regional networks. And so since the last time I was here, really exciting news, President Biden announced the winners of our 7 hydrogen hubs. So you can see where they're going to be located. And so lots of different production methods, lots of different end uses. And we are going to have also a demand side strategy to help ensure that there's offtake for these hubs. And so there'll be more information available, but close to $1 billion for the demand side strategy. So that's the national strategy. So now where are we today? If you look at the US, we produce about roughly 10 million metric tons, so more than 10% of the global capacity, mostly for refining, ammonia, and then we have over 1,600 miles of pipeline, 3 caverns, including the world's largest. And then very recently, we show here the new hubs, the locations. These are some of them are still in process of being finalized. And then you can see the announcements from industry for hydrogen production. And so if you add all these up, these are the announcements for 14 million metric tons. So again, our national goal was 10 million, so it looks optimistic. And then we have thousands of units. We update these, at least every 6 months or so. It changes quickly, but for instance, the niche application of forklifts where we started, now we're over 70,000. So major companies, Amazon, Walmart, in fact, every few seconds, some customers refueling with hydrogen for the forklift market. And I should mention that we have several US companies here too as well. I think at the end, if they can stand, for example, Plug Power, PDC, Versogen, and others. So if they can stand, you'll get a chance to meet with some of them. But so that's the status. And then really exciting news to give you a snapshot of how much progress has been made. You can see we track electrolyzer installations in the US, and many of them are planned, but these are firm commitments or under construction. And in just 1 year, you can see the growth here of firm commitments, either under construction. Again, this is changing. It's already probably outdated. And then you can see where these are located. So, and these don't include the smaller ones. The smallest is a megawatt, and then over a gigawatt capacity. So again, you'll see, and this does not include the hubs. If with the hubs, we would get about 3 million metric tons of hydrogen. So again, contributing to those longer term goals. The other thing I wanted to really highlight, for the first time, we are mapping out the planned liquefaction and then large scale storage facilities across the US. And so again, you can see the operating plants here, 800 metric tons per day of liquefaction. This is going to be really important as we deliver hydrogen for some of the stations, the caverns. We're also looking at the natural gas wells. We have about 400 to see how can we, repurpose some of those. So that is a high level snapshot. Now I'll go into the activities that we have at DOE and how we're addressing some of the priorities. And the chair here mentioned R&D. So we have a lot of activities in R&D, consortia, really looking forward to the RETAP collaboration. I'll talk about this. We have first of a kind demonstrations, for instance, Microsoft data center with electrolyzer, fuel cell, steel, renewables, nuclear. So many examples of first of a kind de-risking for industry. And then we have the deployment and financing piece, including the hubs. And then we also have an innovative loan program office with so far about 3 billion to help de-risk and finance some of these activities. And then enabling activities. We've heard a lot also in India about workforce. I'll talk a little bit more about some of these activities as well. And then there's lots of documents available. Again, we have everything open in terms of transparency. So feel free to look at the website. And just a couple of months ago, we released our multi-year program plan on the R&D side. So in addition to the national strategy. So this has a lot more detail. Since this is a technical audience, I'm happy to just share, how we define all the barriers. We have very specific technical targets. So this is just an example for electrolysis efficiencies. We go through details, current density and so forth. And then how do we address those barriers through our R&D and D initiative? So some of you may know that DOE, we have targets. So for example, technical targets. And so here, for each of the applications. So this is for fuel cell heavy duty trucks, $80 a kilowatt. Our hydrogen production. We also have hydrogen delivery, cost of carbon fiber tanks. And here I just want to digress for a second and tell a really, I think, valuable real life story. And how many of you have heard of Florence Chadwick? Anybody heard of her? Okay, nobody. So she was the first woman who swam the English Channel from back and forth, like back, soon after World War II. And one day she was swimming to an island in the US, Catalina Island. But the day she was supposed to swim, the weather was just really bad. There was just lots of rain and fog, and it was really dangerous conditions. But that day she decided, okay, I'm still going to do it. And so she went to swim and she was going to swim this long distance and the safety boat was behind. And so she was swimming and swimming and there was just so much fog and rain and she just couldn't see anything. And then finally she said, okay, I just can't go anymore. I just can't see. It's just pull me up. And the coach who was in the safety boat monitoring just looked down and said, you're swimming fine, you have a good stroke, just keep going. And so she said, okay. So she tried and tried, so much fog and rain. And finally she said, okay, I just can't keep going. You have to lift me out. And at that exact time, the fog lifted and there was the island. She could see the island. And so the moral of the story was that if you could see the goal, that is what gives us the momentum and the determination to get to that goal. And so I always tell the story, and after, decades for me, almost 3 decades in the space and industry and government, we have so much activity. Just think about your daily lives, so many emails, so much activity and fog and mist. And so it's just so hard to focus on the most important thing. So I always tell this as an example of how we think about just the challenge that we all face. And so everyone, we have to focus on the goals. And so these are our technical goals. We have many more, but that I'll focus on. And then we show where are we today at low volume manufacturing. Again, these are all estimates. We get input from industry. We constantly revise these. And then if we can project to high volume manufacturing, so you can see, whether it's tanks, like carbon fiber composite tanks, delivery dispensing, where we think we can be. But we still have to get that cost down. And so we have a lot of rigor in terms of where should we focus. So for instance, electrolysis, we know efficiency, this high temperature is key. If you look at, again, this is one example, stations, the dispenser, storage, carbon fiber tanks, the carbon fiber itself. There's also balance of plant. So my main message here is there's just a lot of technical detail to help guide where we need to focus. And it's not always good news. So I have, unfortunately, not so good update since last time. I appreciated the question on lessons learned and learning from failures. And so if you look at what we had published, and these are global numbers here, so you see Arena, Bloomberg, on electrolyzer cost. And so this, then we had COVID. now we have more recent results, and you can see the electrolyzer. This is PEM electrolyzer cost, but you can see from around the world the costs have actually gone up. And you see installation costs are actually quite high, so we're more around $2,000 a kilowatt for the total PEM electrolyzer system. So I think we really have to be realistic in terms of how do we help reduce that cost. So what we have done, a really exciting news, is since we remember I mentioned high volume manufacturing is really critical. So since we met last time, we announced new projects, so 52 new projects, and across many states, the jobs, industry cost share. And what this will enable is 10 gigawatts per year of electrolysis manufacturing capacity. That will help to, again, reduce the cost, get the scale up, and then 14 gigawatts of fuel cell manufacturing capacity, which would help enable 50,000 trucks if we're really going to meet our truck targets. And so if you look at these projects, so we'll be focusing on stack manufacturing, but also the supply chain. So bipolar plates, various other components, and then next generation innovations. It's great to see the R&D focus here in India, but for example, non-PFAS membranes. And then for the first time, the first of its kind in the world, we are launching H2Circ, which is a recovery and recycling consortium, because we do need to think about the end of life. Um, Iridium, platinum, the membranes. And so you can see many partners, global partners. So happy to collaborate with those interested. And we'll be launching this for 64 million shortly. And then all these slides are available on our website. And we also list all the companies that have won. Some of you are here, so a big congratulations to those who are involved. There are also some international players, and these are in the process of being negotiated and awarded now. And then we have completely new activities that I did want to touch upon because most people on the planet are not aware of these, but it's really important that we keep track of. And one is geological hydrogen. So I think, as many of you know, in 1987, there was an accidental discovery in Mali, in the country. There was a worker whose cigarette actually lighted or ignited hydrogen that was seeping out of the ground. They were drilling a water well, but instead they found hydrogen. They actually plugged it, but in the last decade, it's been actually powering the entire village. And so, what is the opportunity for geological hydrogen storage? The second is the climate science. So we have now, with our international partners, the largest sampling network in the world to look at hydrogen concentrations, emissions, and then the other key need. So for those of you in the R&D space, we need to be able to monitor for hydrogen leaks. And it's, small molecule, no dipole moment. It's not easy to monitor parts per billion level. So we have new projects in that space and a lab that helps us to monitor. So I'll talk about some of these, and I think the main one is the natural hydrogen or geological hydrogen. You can see the mechanism here. Again, one example of these iron-rich subsurface areas with water, oxidizing, producing hydrogen. And now it's like a gold rush, really, I think, even globally. So we've had various workshops, and we have many companies now that are looking at what is the possibility for that hydrogen. But lots of questions, how much is in the core? Is it sustainable? How quickly does it get to the crust? And how can you identify for that hydrogen? So potentially millions of tons, but potentially devastating environmental impact as well if we don't do that appropriately. So that is on the geological hydrogen. And then I wanted to share some very exciting news on the climate science. And so we are actually getting the data from the ice samples. And you can see long before the hydrogen economy, the hydrogen concentration has actually been going up. If you just take a sample of air, just grab air, it has 550 parts per billion of hydrogen. And if you look at uh, Antarctica, it's been going up, but Greenland is actually going down. But we really don't have a good understanding of, and the models don't necessarily correlate. There's just a lot of unknowns. We know hydrogen's a carbon-free molecule, but we also know that it could have secondary global warming impacts because OH radicals basically get depleted, so methane life is prolonged in the atmosphere. So we also need to understand the sinks, and most people don't know this either, but there are a lot of potential, natural sinks for hydrogen. So with Princeton and NOAA, we're funding work here, and you can see very interesting, again, hot off the press data showing how the forests actually are a larger sink that can, reduce that hydrogen concentration compared to the sand in the meadow. So another great example of forest um, environmental impact benefits. So again, I just wanted to give you a really quick overview of some of the exciting activities, new capabilities and tools like HiScans, like a TurboTax looking at codes and standards, lots of acronyms here, HELPER, which is hydrogen extremely low probability of rupture, looking at structural integrity, blend path for blending hydrogen with natural gas, and then we are setting up testing facilities. So at our national labs, for instance, for large scale testing, both for fuel cells and electrolyzers. So these will be available for partnering. We've had lots of interest from companies that want to independently validate their hydrogen activities for. And so finally, I'll end with the whole of government approach. We heard that from India as well. And then we also have a hydrogen interagency task force with 12 agencies and the White House, and also chaired at the White House and deputy secretary level. And so on top of all my other jobs, I'm also the HIT director here, but we have 3 working groups: supply and demand, infrastructure siting, permitting, and then analysis. How do we really have a robust global supply chain? And then we got this domain name 20 years ago when hydrogen was not popular, but you can go to hydrogen.gov to get an idea of what we're doing on the Hydrogen Interagency Task Force. And then I'll end with energy, environmental justice, diversity, equity, inclusion, which is really a high priority. And these are some of the key areas: workforce, Justice 40. In the US, we have 40% of specific investments need to benefit disadvantaged communities. Um, and we have lots of questions, I think many of you have seen, on hydrogen safety and NOx emissions and so forth. And so we have responses now that are available online to get feedback from stakeholders. And then lots of projects. So for instance, the first project, we have a UPS fuel cell truck, the first time delivering a package. And this was in a disadvantaged community. So it really shows zero emissions and the benefits there, completed that project. And then we also have this new hydrogen game, harnessing hydrogen, that we released with the Boston Science Museum. It's really a way to get the public, the youth, more engaged, to optimize your hydrogen deployment using this sort of card game. So, and this is available for sharing. And then also, I always talk about the
Dr.
importance of
Satyapal,
safety. Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. This from the chair.
Okay.
This side.
Yes,
I
I
think we are
realized
running slightly
we're
short of
okay.
time. So,
Well, I'm almost
yeah,
finished.
thanks a lot.
So I realized I think at the last minute we have another speaker here. So my original presentation was supposed to be for 40 minutes, but I think I'll cut it down to, I'm at 23 minutes, so I'll try to finish shortly. So safety, I think, is really critical. So the main thing is Center for Hydrogen Safety, over 100 partners. And then the bilateral partnership that we have is obviously really critical, and hydrogen is one part of that. And I'll end with the importance of global collaboration. And I always talk about how no one person can whistle a symphony, no matter how hard you try. You really need the whole orchestra. So government, industry, all of the collaborators here. And through the breakthrough agenda, which the UK, India, and the US are leading, there are some high priority areas on where we need to collaborate. So please stay tuned to what we are doing here. And I think what I'll do is, since we're running short on time and I have so much more material, I'll give a shout out to the Early Career Network under IPHE, since we have a youth event here, and then end with lots of resources that we have available. So go to our website, mark your calendars for Hydrogen Day in honor of the atomic weight of hydrogen. And then I would be remiss if I don't thank my entire office. We have many who have been strong supporters of hydrogen. So you can see us celebrating there on Hydrogen Day with our hydrogen t-shirts. And then finally, since hydrogen is the lightest element in the universe and um, rises to the very top. And I wasn't sure if I should show this picture, but many people told me I have to show it. So on behalf of the entire hydrogen community, you can see me thanking President Biden for all the support for hydrogen. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Satyapal, for this very comprehensive presentation. I had a few questions, but your presentation preempted all of them. And I think there was not a single question that was left unanswered, including standards and certification and R&D. Today, we of course have another uh, speaker. Ms. Reta will now talk to us about, we now come to the costs and the possibility of support from banks, lending, debt, whatever is required to put the hydrogen ecosystem in place. So we had Dr. Satyapal talk to us about the grants, but that has to be, it has to be go along with debt. So I think Ms. Reta can tell us what the US is doing on that count. Thank you so much.
Minister, thank you very much for giving us the time to be with all of you. This is really such a great opportunity for us at USXM Bank to be able to participate in a green hydrogen conference here. I understand you've had maybe about 6 of these, but last year you had 3,000 participants. You moved now to about 7,000 participants. And it actually just tells us that the people that are in this room are ranging everything from those who are looking at green hydrogen to renewables, energy efficiency, battery storage, fuel cells, hydrogen electrolyzers. I would say all things green. And so it tells me that from an Ex-Im Bank perspective, as the U.S. bank, as the U.S. government's financer on debt, we're in the right room because it is the people that is in this room that is really going to be driving the different economies. You know, as the director so laid out where we are in our U.S. government from a policy perspective, I just want to just bring a couple of comments about where XM is. XM is an institution that this February was turned 90 years old. And we play a critical role in fostering economic opportunity for US companies and for our partner nations like India around the world. So for those of you who may not know, our XM, the Export Import Bank of the US, or XM as we like to call it, is America's official export credit agency of the US. And our prime mission is to support American jobs by facilitating exports of U.S. goods and services. Now, I have said before, there is not one country, one city, one state, or one nation that I've been in where you cannot just talk about jobs at home here in the U.S. In the U.S., we have to talk about jobs in India and jobs in the localities that we want to be doing business in. But from an XM perspective, XM is an institution that is federally chartered by the United States Congress. We offer products such as direct loans, loan guarantees, and insurance products, all backed by the United States, full faith and credit of the U.S. You know, but unlike other U.S. government agencies, we are the debt financiers for the U.S. government. You know, to be very clear, we lend money for bankable transactions that involve a U.S. exporter and a foreign buyer. So it is really good to be here because, from a government perspective, to have institutions like the Department of Energy, like Export Import Bank, so that you can really see how we move from the policy side to all and operationalizing all of that to how we move from a financing side for commercial projects. One of the things at USXM Bank is that when we were reauthorized, Congress gave us a lending cap of over 100 billion and $35 billion. We have spent north of about $35 billion. And we really have been offered 4 additional mandates that Congress asked us to make more financing available in small business, make more financing available in transformational exports area, which also includes renewables, but also to make more financing available in sub-Saharan Africa, and also to make more financing available in renewables, energy efficiency, and energy storage. So for decades, we have financed American exports across a range of sectors like transportation, telecommunications, and so much more. So we're really eager to build upon our strong work to help advance our shared economic and global energy transition goals with India. So we're here in India to meet with the private sector companies and government leaders to discuss EXIM's financing while identifying, as the director said, collaborative opportunities that can support U.S. companies and Indian companies which import goods and services from the US, and also Indian companies that invest in the US. So I know there are many companies right now in this room, as the director pointed out, like Plug Power and Bloom Energy and others. We don't pick a winner, we don't pick anyone. We are a demand driven agency, but along with a whole host of companies in the US, they are actively, we know, involved in developing the most advanced and efficient electrolyzers for deployment in clean hydrogen projects. We know with the high production costs and emergence of new electrolyzer technology in the green energy, hydrogen energy sector, having the right financing tool is definitely necessary. So I did not come alone. I came with my colleagues from the embassy. Hildy, raise your hand. Came with our XM Bank Vice President for Power, Structured and Structured and Project Finance. I think he's right here in the back. Dan with our engineer, Ashok. Chris is in the back, and then I think John is right here on the front row. So I encourage you while we're here to please get to know these individuals, or at least make sure you give them your card, because these are the individuals that will help you uh, bring the work that you are looking to finance into XM Bank. And then with the team here, those who can help you talk about how you can structure those particular projects or financing. So we're considering sourcing environmental. So for those of you who are considering sourcing environmentally beneficial goods and services from US, we also have a special program like our environmental expert program, which offers repayment terms of up to 22 years after completion of the construction of the project, interest capitalization during construction, and automatic local cost financing to 50% of the total export value. Now, one of the things is we don't have to do this work alone. We are working very closely with your XM banks here in India, and we can co-finance also in a trilateral perspective, as well as we can co-finance. We have, I think, in the last 2.5 years in the Biden administration, XM Bank has re-upped about 20 plus odd co-financing agreements with friends and allies. On the domestic front, one last thing is that for those who are interested already in the planning phase of building manufacturing facilities for the production of electrolyzers or hydrogen production plants in the US, XM launched our very first domestic financing initiative, which we call Make More in America, or MMIA. MMIA provides term financing for domestic manufacturing projects that have an export nexus for the very first time. Now, this is an initiative designed to help both US and Indian companies and foreign companies abroad, like right here in India, while they're investing in building manufacturing facilities in the United States. So we've already, in a few short months, authorized over 4 transactions, and we look forward to continuing to support domestic manufacturers and helping them grow through exports. So as we strive for green transition in energy technologies, renewable options are not always the easiest one. There are a lot of variables, as the doctor pointed out, especially when it comes to economic viability. It is not without its own set of challenges. But at XM, we believe that we truly understand those challenges, and we want to have to be able to offer up financing solutions to address those challenges so that you can move your projects and expand and grow. We have several tools that we will be able to discuss with the minister and the doctor, whether it is letters of interest that we can issue on projects that are coming to fore, projects that companies may be bidding on. We also have, and we can discuss our engineering multiplier program, whereby feasibility studies which are for the work that we can offer for credit-worthy borrowers, especially engineering firms who are looking for opportunities. And it is going to be in this space that we have already done this. And we are really looking to and proud to be able to be at a conference where we can talk about joint action and collaboration, especially around commercial partnerships as we all move and grow this particular industry in this sector. Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much, Ms. Reta Jo Lewis. Do we have time for some questions? One or two questions. So those of you who want to ask questions may raise their hands, and I'll request. Yeah, gentleman there.
Yeah, thank you, sir, for this opportunity. And my question is to Dr. Satyapal. I am Prankush Dagar. I am from KEC International. We are an EPC company, and operation and maintenance for these hydrogen plants have been a black box for the new companies that are trying to enter. Neither not only a black box but also a pain point. So, Dr. Satyapal, my question is that since these skill sets are concentrated in India, at least in very smaller spots such as refineries, how do you suggest that we as a nation should progress in this direction of extracting those skill set from those hotspots of refineries and then bringing them into the mainstream so that a wider adoption of these projects can be achieved on track? Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. Is working? Okay. And I would say that we learned a lot as well when we did the National Hydrogen Learning Demonstration more than almost 25 years ago. We had that time it was small, 200 vehicles, about 30 stations. Some were on-site electrolysis, steam methane reforming, and so we learned a lot. There were a lot of challenges with operations, maintenance, and so I definitely agree. One thing we did, which you might want to consider, is having a data collection. We had it without attribution because some of that information is company sensitive. And so we were able to collect data, especially on operation maintenance and share that without attribution. So that's something that we're hoping to do now with our deployments. And we'd be happy to talk more on how we can do that effectively.
Hi.
Okay. Yeah, gentleman there. Yeah, you can take the mic from the.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm actually from a company called Air Products. Air Products is an American multinational, industrial gases company, and we are actually putting up the world's largest green hydrogen green ammonia project in NEOM in Saudi Arabia, currently under execution. We are also putting up a lot of blue hydrogen projects in US, in Louisiana, and also in Alberta in Canada. So I just wanted to ask Sunita, madam, that what is your focus in terms of blue hydrogen, because that's also another sector where you can capture and utilize the CO2 and decarbonize the existing gray hydrogen. So is there a focus on that as well? Because I can see a lot of potential in India also in terms of blue hydrogen, but I don't think MNRE is working that much on the blue side, more on the green side actually. That was the question.
Like I said at the beginning, we are colorblind.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
thank you. And of course, we
Thanks.
know Air Products really well. I've known you for many years, supported
Thank you.
for many years. And we also, as I said, we don't have, we're trying to stay away from blue and green. So it's really carbon intensity. And there are some really good either natural gas or waste biogas projects, and not just SMR, but pyrolysis is getting a lot of interest because you have that, value add carbon product. So we have one actually that got a loan um, a program guarantee. I think it was 1.5 billion. And so as long as they can get to that carbon intensity threshold that I showed, it's really not. And we have with the hubs, there are quite a few, blue hydrogen projects as well. So again, it's not either or. We know that it's going to take time to get the green. And so we again have an all of the above as long as we make the carbon intensity approach.
Yeah, I think on the shorter term time frame, blue can be sort of in the transition phase. Can we quickly
No.
implement it?
This is Suraj.
Offline, please. We'll just have one last question from someone from please.
Yeah, hi, good afternoon. I'm Suraj Sharma from Indian Oil Corporation Limited. My question to Ms. Sunita is that production of green hydrogen is very water heavy process. And when the world is dealing with the water crisis also at the same time. So what is your take on that?
Yeah, and that's a good point because most people don't realize that steam methane reforming, you need the steam, and that's also quite water intensive. So, obviously water, theoretically it's only 2.5 gallons of water per kilogram. We're getting a better handle of, what the actual water would be. But part of our requirements for the hydrogen hubs was for all of the applicants to provide a really detailed list of the water resource requirements, where they would get it from, where could we optimally place that hydrogen. And then there are also innovative approaches like our Trigen. I'm not sure if you've heard of the world's first Trigen we demonstrated with a wastewater treatment plant, high temperature fuel cell, and water is actually one of the products. And so, because it's a fuel cell that's operating, and there's so much water that's produced, along with hydrogen, heat, power, the water is actually used for a car wash. This is at the Port of Long Beach. So you can take a look at that. So again, water is definitely an issue, but we're looking at, how do we optimize placement and address, all of the environmental issues as we ramp up.
I think
But
that
just a question, do your costs for hydrogen, do they include the costs of desal water?
Yes, yes. And that contribution is actually a really small fraction.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want to just leave with the comment that, this is a new, as someone said to me today, hydrogen today is where solar was 20 years ago. And with all of these new emerging technologies, we just wanted to make sure that we came to give you a glimpse in the fact that we are totally committed and serious about the financing of these technologies. But to be able to do that, to be able to have those types of technologies presented to us, for us to work in collaboration with the government of India, to work in partnership and collaboration with ECAs here in India and those around the world, is the ones that we're looking to do. And so having all of you here and having being introduced to all of you, just we wanted to ensure that you knew how serious and committed we were to working in this sector.
Good. So I think the future looks bright and beautiful. So on that note, we will conclude this session. I'd like to thank Dr. Sunita Satyapal and Ms. Rita Jo Lewis for wonderful presentations, which gave us a lot of insights into the work that they are doing. And we hope that they will be back with us next year with more insights. Thanks a lot. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to our speakers. And from the ministry side, I would like to request Shri Abhi Bhakre sir, the Mission Director of the National Green Hydrogen Mission, to kindly present the mementos to our Honorable Chair. Thanking Shri T.K. Ramachandran. And to our two eminent speakers, Dr. Sunita Satyapal and Ms. Rita Jo Lewis. Ladies and gentlemen, our breakout sessions have already started, and to prize this August gathering, one of the breakout sessions, that is 1B, Conventional and Emerging Solutions for Storage and Transportation of Green Hydrogen, is going to be taking place in this hall. Just as we close with the plenary sessions, we start with the breakout session 1B here. The other 1A and 1C and D, they've already started in their respective halls. That's on level 2, we have the breakout 1A, optimization and indigenization of electrolysis process. In 1C session, hydrogen for defense sector, that's at level 1, meeting room 9. And then we have harnessing green hydrogen through biomass-based pathway. That's going to be in meeting room 10, level 1. Herein, we are going to be starting with the conventional and emerging solutions for storage and transportation of green hydrogen. Also would like to apprise the August gathering. Tomorrow, Honorable Prime Minister Modi is going to be coming in the premises for another conference, which is right across. So we are going to be here in the plenary hall. We have 3 sessions. We're going to be going